Hey guys, this is Cody Jones with Jangus Genetics LLC. And one of the things that I'm trying to figure out this year is based on the book Ranching Like a 12-Year-Old by Tom. I never can pronounce his last name, but check out the book. It's a good book. It's a book that works for beginners because it's got some basic concepts. But as a professional, I also found some good things that made me think. So I always say that a good book does a good job of making things simple, bringing in some ideas that maybe I haven't thought about for a while or need to rethink. And I did get some nuggets in there. One of the things I thought was interesting was the way he talked about grazing in the sweet spot. And it's it's April 31st. Well, it's been about 35, 40 days since we've been in this paddock, and we just turned in about 55,000 pounds of heifers. And grazing in the sweet spot is something that I found really interesting. So I wondered, my thought was, does it change with location, with environment, with rainfall? And of course it does. But his idea was, Tom, I believe he's a grazer in Canada, and his idea was that once 20% of the grasses are headed out, you want to be in that pasture because that's grazing in the sweet spot. And to me, it sounded like he said you want to try to do that all grazing season long. And so my question is grazing on fescue, does that make a difference? So we're a predominantly fescue pasture here. We get some red clover, hopefully, but we're in the bottom right now, and it's just beautiful. We've got a little rain. We hit this late in the season, like I said, about 35 days ago, be pretty close to that. And we've got some bluegrass in here that is heading out, and I'd say we are probably 25 to 30% headed in this pasture. And so it's really interesting to me, and I want to, kind of keep up with this idea through the season, the grazing season, to see what works. Because my first thought when I read it was, well, man, we're 90% fescue, and by the time we get headed out on fescue, we're in big trouble. Carpenter bee. We're in big trouble because everything's going to be headed out, because once the fescue starts to turn, we're in trouble. So fescue, or most grasses, I guess, are really, really nutritious in that headed out, that milky stage is what I think it's called. When that seed head is going on, it's got lots of energy. The grass is pushing that energy into that seed head. And the cows, I looked at the pasture that we just came out of, and there's not a seed head to be found. They just absolutely stripped them. It's just like eating cream. I mean, they are just going along and they are just taking the tips off of these seed heads. Absolutely doing incredible on it. The manure looks good. Their body condition looks good. Everything looks good. And then they're still taking the tips of all the fescue and all the other stuff. And the way that they're grazing it, it just looks good to me. And coming off of I think we're in a 3-year drought here, and I'm hoping we break it this season, but we're still really dry. So that's something that's playing into it. Because you're not going to have as much volume and quantity as you normally would. But anyway, so I guess according to Tom, we are grazing in the sweet spot, and I'm excited about it. I want to continue to see, because the next thing it's going to be heading out here in May, June is going to be our fescue. And in the book Knowledge Rich Ranching by Alan Nation, he says the job of a grazer in the spring, the job of cool season grass in the spring is to put on a head, and the job of the grazer is to keep it from putting on a head. And I really take that to heart. We're on probably, it's not perfect, but I'd say somewhere between 30 and 40 days here is when I want to get back on this grass to keep that fescue from heading out. And I know we're going to get some heads, but I want to kind of keep ahead of it, keep it getting mature. The problem with fescue, there's two big problems with letting your fescue get a hard seed head in it. The first one is your endophyte increases quite a bit. It's a fungus that gives the cattle basically low-grade fever all summer, and it gets concentrated in the seed heads and in the base of the plant. So anything below 4 to 6 inches, and then in the seed head. So your endophyte's going to increase. It's going to make those cattle feel kind of gross and lousy and kind of like they got a low-grade fever. I don't let my cattle get into ponds, but that's where they want to be in the summer, especially these black cows. And that endophyte is a big cause to that. I think it gives them breathing problems too, kind of restricts the blood flow, and it does a lot of nasty stuff. And the other problem is once that gets a mature seed head on it, it gets very scratchy. So the cattle have several eyelids, from my understanding, and they get those seed heads stuck in their eyes, and that leads to a lot of pink eye problems. They get scratches. and a lot of those kinds of things. So really a primary goal of mine is to keep the fescue from getting a mature seed head. Little beetle. But and again, we're predominantly fescue pastures. I mean, what I'm dealing with here, I'd say 80 to 90%. I like the diversity. I want the diversity. Diversity is great, but fescue is a tough grass. It's an awesome winter feed, and it's what we have now. I mean, it's just really tough. It's drought tolerant for the most part. It really is a pain in the butt and an incredible useful tool all at the same time, and we have to manage it to get our optimal performance, or the most beneficial performance we can for our animals, our land. So that's basically what I got. I'm going to come back again in 30 to 40 days. We'll be back in here again. I don't want to leave you with just the idea that you got to hit your ground again every 30 to 40 days. If we get dry or we get wet, we move slower or faster. Basically what I'm looking for is that seed head, that grass seed, to put that tip back on. And yeah, they grazed this lane last night. See if I can find you one. So if I'm doing my job right, I'm gonna focus here. There's a few things that I want to be able to do. Come on. Yeah, it's not gonna do it for me. But there's a few. There we go. There's a few things that I want to be able to do. I want to bank my grass for winter feed. And so kind of the idea behind a lot of what I'm doing out here is we're taking a bite off of a blade of grass. And then when we come back, we want that blade of grass next time to be a lot taller. And we don't want to graze again until it gets our tip. And you just can't see it here. But we basically don't want to graze again until we get a tip back on our grass, our blade of grass. So they're going to graze it short. Then when it puts that tip back on, you see that long, good, nice tip there. We can graze it again. That's kind of the idea. That means your grass is recovered. It's putting, once your grass blade has put a tip back on it, from my understanding, it's basically your solar collector's done its job, and it's either going to put energy back into the roots, which we want, so you don't want to graze it too soon again. But because if you hit this and then you hit it again before it's got a tip back on, you're going to damage the roots. You're going to draw energy from the roots. Grass is a solar collector. We want it to leave a solar panel here so it can grow that tip again. But once it gets the tip, then it's going to start shooting up and try to reproduce and go to seed. And so we want to get it somewhere, between this stage and the seed stage. And so that's the idea. And then also I want to bank my grass up. So the first time I graze it, it's pretty short. Second time I graze it, I want it to be taller. And then each time I continue to graze it, I want to leave a little bit more. And that way, when we have a hard killing frost in the wintertime, when the ground gets cold, the grass quits growing, then we can go back and we have our feed bank stored, or we're growing our hay supply is kind of my idea here. I'd like to make it through feeding less than 1 bale per cow this winter. And that's just kind of a rough goal. Not something I'm hard and set to. I'm still going to buy enough hay that I normally would, 3 to 4 bales, just to make sure I don't mess anything up, make sure that I'm not lacking in conception rates, or if I screw up and we have a huge snowstorm or whatever. I don't want to starve my cows, definitely. But I also want to use the land that we have here, use the grass, because this fescue is really, really awesome for winter feed. And so grazing it up and then banking it makes a great winter feed, saves money on hay. And if you have the ability to do that, it's an awesome thing, large scale or small scale, whatever works for you. Then we're going to supplement what we can't keep, or if we have ice or can't graze, we're going to supplement that with hay, make sure we're taking care of our cows. So anyway, we'll hit this again in 40 days. And I would just encourage you to check out the book, Ranching Like a 12-Year-Old. It's not a real cheap book, but the good ones usually aren't. There's a lot of nuggets in there. He's also got a YouTube channel. I think it's Ranching Like a 12-Year-Old, but it's got some nuggets in there, especially if you pair it with the book. if you don't want to buy the book, check out the YouTube channel. But we'll hit it again and see what our seed heads look like, because I feel like we're just a lot more consistent here, in that we don't have seed heads all year long. But the idea that I want to hit it before I want to hit it when the majority of the grass here is putting that tip back on the grass, is kind of where I'm at. Maybe I'll do some searching and message Tom and see what I've seen him comment on Facebook, I think, in the regenerative grazing group. So he's still active online and those kinds of things. So maybe I'll have to ask him. But if you hear from him, let me know. But what does that look like in different environments? And it definitely looks like we are in the sweet spot right now. Again, 20% grass is headed out. It's just all the bluegrass. And so next time we come through here, I'll kind of look and see what we're thinking, check out the grass, see how things go. So interesting concept. We also don't have a lot of warm seasons here, I guess, is what I'll balance that out with, because the fescues are so strong. And so I kind of graze fescue all year long, but we do have some warm seasons. With the rotational grazing, you get in a little bit more of a diverse mix. But I'm still learning. Maybe I'll learn to identify them. I'll shoot some YouTube videos on that. That's kind of cool. But appreciate you guys. If you guys have questions, or if you think that I'm not grazing in the sweet spot, or you think I'm going to run into troubles, let me know. I appreciate your comments, and like, subscribe, follow for more. We appreciate you.